Jai Madhya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pravrajikacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur Ki Jai Shri Caitanya Caritamrita Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Okay, so today I thought we'll continue after the overview of yesterday. I thought we'll go a bit further into a few more of the details of chapter 1 that I sort of overlooked in order to give light of the overview, which is the later part of the first chapter. So to start off with, I thought we'll discuss the Mangala Charan. Because obviously every chapter of Caitanya Caritamrita begins with a Mangala Charan. And obviously everything we do, we always begin, at least to some extent, to pay respects to the people worthy of respect, and so on and so forth. And actually I was listening to a class by one of my godbrothers, Hari Parshad Prabhu. And he was saying some people might sometimes ask the question, why should we do Mangala Charan? Why should we pay respects? Why should we ask for an auspicious beginning to something? So many atheists and all, they are giving many sweet talks, they're convincing many people, and they're saying very many nice things, even without doing any Mangala Charan. They're not acknowledging a spiritual master, the Supreme Lord, or anything. They're doing no acknowledgements, and yet they're very, very successful. So then what is the point then for doing these things? And he said, actually, if you read some Vaishnav previous works, they actually discuss this, and they'll say, even though all these people, they are maybe not explicitly, openly saying, I pay respects to my gurus, the parampara, to the Supreme Lord, even though I'm not paying respects to them, and maybe they are not writing that we hope they will bless us, that we may have a beneficial endeavor, still in their hearts they are thinking, I hope what I say will be nice. I hope what I say will be good. I hope people will like what I hear. I hope people will be convinced by what I say. So in that sense, they are still hoping, they're still aspiring for something, and they're still having a desire. And they're still, in a sense, meditating upon what they wish to do. So they will meditate like this, but it is all built, again, on the notions of themselves, of their own ability, so on and so forth. So no one can avoid having a desire, having a wish before beginning something. But, as we can see here, Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur, and as is common behavior, the Vaishnavas always begin with paying respects outwards, because even though the atheist, he will dwell on his own ability and his own capacity, and then he will pray and hope for that to guide him along. That is a very faulty thing, as we know. It's not a very potent thing. So the Vaishnava, with all of the intelligence that comes with spiritual life, will meditate upon and ask for strength from a source which is perfect, and with humility will learn to cultivate a mood of surrender and dependence to the Supreme Lord and the Vaishnavas. So this is in one sense, the significance and the glories of a Mangala Charan. So we begin the first text of this chapter. It begins completely echoing that sentiment. Even a person with no knowledge can immediately acquire all knowledge simply by the benediction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, I'm praying to the Lord for His causeless mercy upon me. There is that sense of dependence and that idea that actually I'm not depending on myself. I'm not thinking, I hope my brain is functioning well. I'm hoping I get the causeless mercy of my mind, because there's not much mercy in it. Instead, he is learning dependence on the Supreme Lord. And then there is the second text, which I discussed yesterday, the famous Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahoditao, which is the offering respectful obeisances unto Shri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gora to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. I discussed that yesterday, so then I'll go to the next three. And the next three, and this is also the same. This is text number 2, the one with the sun and the moon, is also the second text of the first chapter of Adi Lila. Texts now, however, texts number 3, 4, and 5 are also from Adi Lila, and they are texts number 15, 16, and 17. So, and they are discussing respects mainly to Radha Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Radha Gopi Nath. So these ones, as we would have discussed when Adi Lila was being discussed, these deities in particular I paid respect to because they are representing the 3 different facets of spiritual knowledge. There is Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojana, the relationship, the process, and then the final goal. So these are all presiding over, and each one is associated with an acharya respectively. So we have Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, who are all presiding over 3. The first 2 have a relation. Madan Mohan was worshipped by by Sanatan Goswami, and Govindaji was worshipped by Rup Goswami. However, Gopinath was actually worshipped mainly by Madhu Pandit. However, Raghunath Das Goswami is still assigned as the acharya over Prayojana. And so, there is a significance. These are being repeated for obvious reasons. We know that the text 2 is repeated from Adi Lila. The reasoning there is obvious. Obviously, we need the mercy of Krishna, Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu. Why then are these being repeated again? Is of course because these 3 topics, Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojana, is a systematic delineation of the structure of our entire spiritual life. If all these 3 are understood properly, then there can be no fault. And Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he tells a wonderful parable. Later on in Madhya Lila, we'll get to it. But most of us will know this one already. But it's a wonderful parable, he says, while describing this topic. He says there's a poor man who is very depressed. And he's very upset because he is obviously impoverished. So he is thinking, what can he do with his life? You know, he's feeling very frustrated with his material situation. And so in his despondency, there is an astrologer who is traveling, and the astrologer sees him. And the astrologer, he tells him, he says, why are you so disdainful? Why are you so upset? Why are you in such a frustrated mood? And he says, the astrologer, he explains to him, he says, actually, you should not be. The reason is, your father was actually very wealthy, but because he died some other place, very far away, you do not know where he left the inheritance for you. So knowing this, you should become a little happier. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, in this way, Sambandha was created. Sambandha means connection. So there was a connection made. This poor man who was upset before with no connection to anything, now he has connection to something valuable, his inheritance. And in that sense, he was made happy by this knowledge. In the same way, the jivas are given by the Vedas, the knowledge given in the Vedas and by the Gurus and by the sadhus. By this knowledge, there is a sambandha, a relationship that is established between the jivas and Krishna. And in the same way then that the distress of this poor man was quelled by his connection with the wealth, the knowledge at least of that wealth existing, in the same way, some of his suffering was minimized, and he realized, now I have relation to something else. But speaking then to the astrologer, he was asking, how can I know how to get this treasure? It is not so simple to know that there is treasure there. Otherwise, what is the value? It is buried somewhere. What value can it have for me? And so he asked the astrologer, he says, where can I find this? And the astrologer tells him, he says, well, actually, you need to know. He gives the 4 directions. And he says, if you go southwards, you'll find only wasps and drones. And being attacked by them, you'll be put in such a position that you will not find the treasure. So your quest will be pointless. If you go westward, there will be a ghost. And that ghost, upon you disturbing his haunting, he will become very disturbed and annoyed with you. He will be so irritated that he will curse you. And he will curse you that you will be unable to use your hands. Your hands will become useless. And without any ability to do anything anymore with this curse, again, you will not be able to find the treasure. And then lastly, he says, if you go northward, there will be a big black snake. And treasure or inheritance, no matter how valuable it is not very useful when you're dead. So the snake will end your life, and then again, you will not be able to get that inheritance. But if you only go the slightest bit eastward and then dig down with your hands, then you will be able to find this treasure, and then you'll have reached that goal. So this is like the abhidheya. The abhidheya is the process. If the process is not done correctly, so the knowledge, sambandha, allows us to know our relationship to things, how it truly is, and if that knowledge is properly understood, we can begin to understand what orientation should be had. But in order to reach a place, a position, because currently our relationships, our sambandhas, are not very beneficial for our happiness. Currently, the sambandha of most people is that they are conditioned in Maya. That is and their relationship with Krishna is that it is forgotten. It is gone. So they are understanding that that relationship is there, but they are understanding that it is non-existent. So then, there must be a process then to get to the prayojana, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, of course, is going back home, back to Godhead to serve Krishna. So, this must be understood properly as well, because, as is described here, if we go one way, we will not reach the goal. If we go another way, we will not. And in fact, these 3 false directions are given, and then a 4th correct description is given. These 3 false directions are correlated to karma, yoga, and jnana, meaning the path of seeking bhukti, of pleasures, then the path of siddhi, referring to yoga, the many perfections one can have through yogic masteries, and then finally the mukti, the liberation, which is given through the cultivation of jnana yoga. All these 3 are considered distractions, and if one has them and one has their heart filled with them, they will not reach that final goal of pure bhakti, which should be the prayojan, the final goal for everyone. We know, anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavrittam, anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. That devotion must be devoid of these things. And if the direction is wrong, in the same way as in the parable, if one's conception is mixed with any of these things, then one will go waywardly, and they will not find this ultimate treasure. So this is the parable given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to help illustrate this point. And rather interestingly, just a small tidbit, it is sometimes said actually with the Diksha mantras that are given at second initiation. There's the one beginning with Om Klim Krishnaya. This one, actually there are 3 names mentioned in there. There are Krishna, Govinda, and Gopijana Vallabha. And these 3 names are considered to correlate to each one of these 3 deities. So Krishna is referring to Madan Mohan, Govinda is obviously referring to Govinda, and Gopijana Vallabha is referring to Gopinath. So this is also found. That's just a small little tidbit. So then we have that. Then we continue forth. So that is the value. This is the importance of why these 3 mantras, these 3 elements of worship are repeated, because this is a very significant and central topic. Then next comes a glorification. After the Mangalacharan is complete, we have a few more verses glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. We have all glories unto Sri Gaurahari, who is an ocean of mercy. All glories unto you, the son of Sachidev, for you are the only friend of all fallen souls. Dina Bandhu. We'll get to that a little later in this chapter. And then, all glories unto Lord Nityananda and Advaita Prabhu, and all glories unto all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, headed by Srivas Thakur. As we read in Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation is not considered complete unless his associates all come with him. So when paying, that's why when we give glories to the Panchatattva, it is significant. It is not that we can directly glorify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but also everything that Mahaprabhu entails, which is all his devotees. So that ends the Mangalacharan. And then after that, as we discussed yesterday, there is a description of Chaitanya Bhagavat and so on and so forth, which we have already discussed to some degree, although you can never fully discuss any of these topics. As Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur himself writes, one cannot explain the unlimited glories and unlimited pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But for time constraints, we will go. Then there is a description after that. Before the summary of Madhya Lila, there is the glories given of the various devotees and associates of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These begin with Lord Nityananda Prabhu. So the other three I will get to another time because it's a very extensive glorification that is built mainly upon their literary contributions, and it's a rather long and extensive study. So I thought I will address the other topics and then come back last to that before going on to chapter 2. So here we find the glorification begins. So we hear that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent Nityananda Prabhu from Jagannath Puri to Bengal, which is known as Goradesh, and Lord Nityananda Prabhu overflooded that country with the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So there's many descriptions here. I won't read the whole thing, but there is a description here that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to address Nityananda Prabhu as his elder brother, whereas Nityananda Prabhu addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his Lord. Although Nityananda Prabhu is none other than Balaram himself, he nonetheless always thinks of himself as the eternal servant of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here we have, and then we will skip the next verse, and in this way Srila Nityananda Prabhu introduced the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to everyone without discrimination. Even though the people were fallen souls and blasphemers, they were delivered by this process. This is a distinction we will find continuously in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we will read in the 3rd chapter, he took sannyas mainly for the purpose of preaching. He took it because people would not maybe take him seriously unless he takes the sannyas order. Then people will have some esteem, some respect. And this esteem and respect is reflected strongly in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. When Mahaprabhu is preaching, he's preaching to elevated people in society. Maybe people who have been rejected by Hindu society, like Rupa and Sanatan, who are having different names at the time, Dabir Khas and Sakar Malik. However, these were still people considered high up in society. They were very, very powerful men. People like Rai Ramananda as well, or Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. These were all very elevated people in society. And so this reflected that specific mission of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he went to these respected people and he took sannyas that he may reach them. Nityananda Prabhu did not take sannyas. Nityananda Prabhu was known as an avadhut. He was known as somebody who was very above the rules and regulations, something along the lines of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was well known for also being an avadhut. It was said he would offer for bhoga sometimes raw eggplants. And then in order to marinate them, he would take some water from the Ganga, and he would sprinkle it on top of the eggplant, and then he would eat this raw eggplant as prasadam, and with tears coming down his eyes, he would say, "This is the glories of Krishna Prasad. How relishable is this? How beautiful does this taste?" Such things are a little hard to understand, and so Nityananda Prabhu's pastimes are also similar in a sense. He also embodied that mood of the avadhut. But because of this, Nityananda Prabhu, he is going out and he is giving mercy to all of the people. Jagai and Madhai were not approached directly by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were a little later, but not exactly in a mood of mercy or of benediction, rather one of anger. But it was Nityananda Prabhu who was attacked by them, and then it was Nityananda Prabhu who then begged for their mercy. Nityananda Prabhu, this is reflecting his role as being the Balaram himself. Because Balaram, as we know, he is the Samashti Guru. It is said that the Guru Tattva, the basic principle of the Guru, can be divided into two basic conceptions. There is that of the Samasti Guru. The Samasti Guru is Balaram himself. The Samasti Guru is the conception of the full body of divinity. This is that one Guru. When Guru is one, it is his one basic principle. And the Samasti Guru will take the form in the individual lives of devotees as the Vyasti Guru. The Vyasti Guru is the individual manifestation of that one singular Guru Tattva. So there's that, this is when it is said that the Guru can be in one sense considered Acharya Mam, he is considered God. This is, also referring to the Vyasti Guru manifesting the Samasti Guru. It is that Samasti principle which is the underlying source of Guru Tattva in the world. The Vyasti Guru is in that form of Guru Dev which appears individually to people. And this is the way that Guru is one. We hear constantly, Guru is one, Guru is one. It is not that there are many Gurus. In fact, there is one basic principle, one basic Tattva. And that Tattva is Balaram himself, but Balaram is also coming as Nityananda Prabhu. And what is the Guru doing? The Guru is such a great vessel by which Krishna's mercy is realized on the earth. In the same way, Nityananda Prabhu is reflecting this. He is going out to all people, Everyone, whoever they are, he is going out to give mercy to them. He is taking that mercy of Krishna and he is distributing it. Because he himself is, again, that Samasti Guru. All Gurus are empowered by Balaram, who is, again, which also means they are empowered by Nityananda Prabhu. The bona fide Guru, that is. So, in this sense, we can understand a bit of the glories of Nityananda Prabhu. Because he is so merciful, and when the Guru is giving mercy to so many unqualified people, Srila Prabhupada, we have an understanding. The people Srila Prabhupada was preaching to, we can hear so many stories of how uncultured they were, what sort of background they came from, and yet Srila Prabhupada has taken so many of these people and created some of the greatest devotees out of them. Srila Prabhupada again was empowered by Balaram, empowered by Nityananda, and because of that empowerment doesn't just mean some vague thing that they are capable of achieving whatever they want, that it means empowerment for a purpose. Srila Prabhupada was empowered with that same purpose, that same mood of Nityananda Prabhu, to give out mercy to the most unqualified of people. There's a very funny pastime once. Srila Prabhupada was performing a yajna in the very early days of ISKCON, and he was performing the yajna and doing the fire sacrifice, and as he was going along, he was explaining the steps, how this yajna is to be performed. And then at one point he was saying, okay, so when I say svaha, you throw the rice. So then he was doing the whole yajna, and he came up to the point, and then Srila Prabhupada said, svaha, svaha. But then he didn't go to the third time. He didn't go to the third time. And the reason why is because he had to stop them and he had to explain, throw the rice in the fire, not onto me. So because of this, we understand that there wasn't a strong Vedic culture. There wasn't a strong form of any culture. In order to explain such a basic thing, Srila Prabhupada so simply, with so much humility, merely tolerated these things and then gave out his mercy. Again, this is Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu was attacked by Jagai Madhai, and instead he begged for the mercy of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be upon them. So, we can understand from this something about the glories of Nityananda Prabhu. And what was he doing? Chaitanya Shebo, Chaitanya Gao, Lo, Chaitanya Nam. Chaitanya Je Bhakti Kore She Moro Prano. That is what he is doing. He is asking for the seva of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is asking to chant Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name, to always take the name of Mahaprabhu and to render service always unto Mahaprabhu. We know the famous bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Nodiya Gudrume Nityananda Mohajan, and then, what is it? Bolo Krishna, Bhojo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shikha. So we see here, this is the same thing, because Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is no difference. It is not that Mahaprabhu, in a sense, even though he may be described as an avatar, because avatar is one who descends, in one sense he can be described as an avatar. But when he is being described as an avatar in that sense, he is an avatar in the same way that Krishna can be described as an avatar when he descends. But Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is not that Mahaprabhu is an expansion of Krishna. He is the avatari, he is Krishna himself. So in the same way, these two things are describing the very same thing. When Nityananda Prabhu is saying to take the name of Mahaprabhu, or to take the name of Chaitanya, this is the exact same as when he is saying Bolo Krishna, Bhojo Krishna. To do seva unto Mahaprabhu is the same as saying Bhojo Krishna. And then to follow the teachings is the exact same. To follow the teachings of Krishna and to follow the teachings of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are one and the same. So this is something more of the pranam mantras. Then there is a short description of Rupa and Sanatan and Jiva Goswami's literary contributions. Then next, I'll come to the description that I mentioned last time of Ratha Yatra. The Ratha Yatra festival, as we know, I was describing, this section is the highest conception in Madhya Lila. It is a bleeding in of the achievements of Antya Lila into Madhya Lila itself. So they would go and they would see the Gundicha festival at Jagannath Puri every 4 months, the devotees, while Mahaprabhu was in this period, before he retreated away. And it is described that his feelings exactly corresponded to those of the gopis when they saw Krishna at Kurukshetra after long separation. Krishna had come to Kurukshetra with his brother and sister to visit. This is a very important thing that should be remembered, that he is coming with his brother and his sister. And he's coming to Kurukshetra. And Mahaprabhu would sing many things. He would say, let me take Krishna and go back to Vrindavan. He would say, I have gotten that Lord of my life, for whom I was burning in the fire of lusty desires. Obviously not lust in the sense that we have in this world, but I'm sure that's easy to understand that Mahaprabhu, being Krishna himself, is not experiencing the Mahamayic lust. Rather, this is the transcendental longing of the gopis. So he is saying all these things, and constantly he's having ecstasy. And it is described, one of the actual texts that he was saying, it is actually a commonly referred to text. You will find it in many Sanskrit books, mundane books. Because some of the verses Mahaprabhu was saying, they were just, in common understanding at the time, were taken to be taken as mundane rasa. It was just the rasa of a boy in love with a girl. That is how most people understood it. However, Rupa Goswami, it is described here. Rupa Goswami, he understood the proper purport. And he writes, in Padyavali, he writes a continuation. He rewrites this text. And he explains that actually, this text is none other than the meditation of Srimati Radharani. And he places this text on the hut, outside his hut, which essentially was like as public as it could be at the time of his bhajan kutir. He had placed this outside, a translation. And when Mahaprabhu went past and he saw it, he was filled with ecstasy. And he was so filled with ecstasy that he hit Rupa Goswami in his ecstasy. And then he wondered and he asked him, he said, how are you understanding these things? Why are you saying these things? How did you understand the essence of my heart? Because at the time, the only person who had understood this verse was Swarup Damodar himself. Swarup Damodar, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then now Rupa Goswami. So, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asked Swarup Damodar, he said, how could Rupa Goswami understand such the deep elements of my heart, which I'm not revealing to anyone? How could he understand this? And then Swarup Damodar says, surely he must have gotten the mercy of you. He must have received your mercy. Again, this is coming back to that central point. Any knowledge, any realization is coming only by the mercy of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. From the beginning points, but also to the most conclusive ones. It is not that at any point the devotee becomes independent of the mercy of the Supreme Lord or the spiritual master. Even when realizing these highest and most intimate elements, again, this meditation, this cry, this prayer of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming from the depths of his realizations of the moods of Radharani. This is very esoteric. This is not basics of Bhagavad Gita. This is the highest conclusions. But even then, these things are coming purely through the mercy of the Supreme Lord. It is not that it comes from anywhere else. So constantly, this mercy is there. But Rupa Goswami, he is given an extra amount of mercy. And then Mahaprabhu says, indeed, this is true. I have empowered Rupa Goswami. I have empowered him to preach the conclusive conclusions of our philosophy, of spiritual life. This is why we know Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam. He has understood the heart of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is the qualification for him to write all of his books. I am teaching right now Nectar of Instruction to a small group of some youth. It's like a small youth class. And I remember the first time, some of them asked, they said, we are studying Bhagavad Gita, these are the words of Krishna. I understand why we should care, why Krishna said. Bhagavatam is the incarnation of Krishna. Again, we can understand there's some value, there's authority. It has been listed as one of the great Shastras. But Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction, maybe I can respect Rupa Goswami, he's maybe a great devotee, but why should we study him like Shastra? Why is his opinion not to be like any other's opinion? Why can't I take his opinion like any other person who might have some insight? Maybe what he is saying is right, but why should I take his opinion as authoritative? Here we find, because Sri Rupa Goswami has understood that heart of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is Sri Chaitanya, it is Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam. And understanding that heart fully, he has been empowered to explain that heart. We cannot access the heart of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. Mahaprabhu in his pastimes, he has gone off in his madness. He is not so concerned in explaining it. But Rupa Goswami has a qualification to explain these things because he is empowered, because he has understood that heart. And having understood that heart, he is distributing it in the form of his books, which Srila Prabhupada has so mercifully given to us. And by explaining that heart, then we can begin to understand something of the great mystery of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is his qualification. He has understood properly the internal heart and reasoning of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then, but what then is that heart? We hear that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was lamenting, and we read Prabhupada says, he was experiencing what the gopis felt at Kurukshetra when they saw Krishna with his brother and his sister. Later on, when we get to chapter 12 and so on and so forth, we'll discuss a bit more deeper into Subhadra and Balaram, especially in their forms, accompanying Jagannath Swami in the Ratha Yatra, which, by the way, is called the Gundicha Yatra in Orissa. Outside Orissa, it's referred to as Ratha Yatra, but within it, it is referred to mainly as Gundicha, the Gundicha Yatra, the journey to the Gundicha Mandir. So, we will discuss that further. But there is a specific point to be made. Because at one point in Krishna's pastimes, when he was king of Dwarka already, very opulent, the Aishvarya was coming very, very prominently forward. At this point, he was going to do some yagyas at Kurukshetra, because as we know, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. It is, Kurukshetra is a place of pilgrimage, it is a place of sacrifice. It is very auspicious. So he went to perform some yagyas there. And he thought this is a very sweet opportunity in order to invite the gopis and all the other denizens of Vrindavan. I would like to invite them so then I can meet them. Yes, after so long. Because they are burning so intensely in the pains of separation. It is described that at one point, when Krishna had already departed for a while, the gopis, they had written a message for a swan to carry. As we know, Radharani, she goes in her pain, she sees a bee and she sees it as a messenger of Krishna and she starts communicating. The other gopis had similar moods as well. And they saw this swan. And they saw this swan and they thought this swan can deliver a message to our Krishna. So they all wrote verses for him to convey to Krishna. And Lalita Sakhi, she wrote one specific passage. And she said, Krishna, it's been so long since you were Narasimhadev. A while ago, you were Narasimhadev. And in Narasimhadev's pastimes, we learned so sweetly that you show your mercy as violence to the non-devotees and to the demons, and you show your mercy as compassion and love to your devotees. From this, we can understand that we are the greatest of demons, and Akrura is the greatest of all devotees. Because you, even though you have no longer taken the half-man, half-lion form, you are tearing open our hearts like you tore open the chest of Hiranyakashipu with this separation of leaving us in Vrindavan, and you have gone to associate with all these other people in Dwarka. So in this sense, you are like Narasimhadev, tearing open the chest of Hiranyakashipu. That same pain, in fact, the pain Hiranyakashipu felt is not even comparable to the pain they are feeling. But they are saying this is the severity of their pain, and that is their meditation. So they are feeling a great amount of pain, of separation with this. And so Krishna thinks, maybe I can appease them. They can come to Kurukshetra and they can meet me. And so there is a great excitement, finally. The meeting, the sambhog after the separation is very, very sweet. Yes? So they're very excited. They're thinking after so long. The separation makes the reunion much more sweeter. So they're thinking now, finally, we will be able to have reunion with that great Krishna who our hearts have been hankering for. And so they are waiting. And then eventually they come to Kurukshetra. And Kurukshetra, again, it is given a specific significance. Because what happens there is revealing ultimately the depths and the value of the hearts of the gopis and of Srimati Radharani, which Mahaprabhu has come to taste. Also the hearts of all the other denizens of Vraj. But we know it is mainly the heart of Radharani that Mahaprabhu has come to taste. So, because once it was asked by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they asked Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they said, there are many dhams in India. There are many dhams all over the world. There's so many. And you are having the opportunity to travel to so many of them. But if you had to stay in one to do your bhajan, which dham would it be? And of course the expectation was that he would say Radhakund, or maybe Vrindavan, maybe Navadvip, maybe even Jagannath Puri, like Mahaprabhu stayed. Mainly he did his bhajan in Jagannath Puri. Maybe all of these places. But instead Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I would rather best dwell, if I had to stay in one dham to focus on my bhajan, I would dwell in Kurukshetra. And this was very confusing to the person who had asked, because they thought, Kurukshetra, they were thinking, we are studying now Caitanya Caritamrita and all. Kurukshetra is Bhagavad Gita. Kurukshetra is Mahabharata. Kurukshetra is all of these, we know that Prabhupada says the Bhagavad Gita is the first level, and then you go to your later studies, and then you go to your postgraduate studies of Caitanya Caritamrita. Why is he going back now to like the school grades? But actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his meditation, the reason why he said this ties into what happens. Because when Radharani and all the gopis, when they saw Krishna, when they saw him at Kurukshetra, rather than having that intensity of their separation, rather than having it appeased because now they're seeing Krishna, they were seeing not the Krishna that they knew. They were seeing a Krishna filled with opulence. And so their hearts were broken even more. Srimati Radharani saw Krishna with a crown, and she thought, the Krishna I know, he has a peacock feather in his head, not a crown. They saw Krishna in great armor, and they thought, the Krishna I know, he wears a simple yellow dhoti, and maybe he is covered in mud from taking care of the cows. He is not dressed so opulently and beautifully with all this armor. The Krishna I know, his arms are not there to hold weapons, his arms are there to hold a flute. Where is his flute? They could not see the flute. The Krishna that we know does not come in a beautiful chariot. He will ride a bullock cart somewhere. This is not the Krishna we knew. And this does not satisfy our hearts. We only want that Krishna of Vrindavan. We want this Krishna. This Krishna is the Krishna we love. This Krishna, we can maybe faintly recognize him, but he does not appease our hearts. And because of that those pains of separation, that tension, that pain that was being experienced was not appeased but made worse. Because what can be worse than those pains of separation? It can be having one's hopes being raised and then having them disappointed. And it is because of this that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that he would do his bhajan at Kurukshetra. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur is none other than Kamala Manjari. The Manjaris, they are mainly their mood, even though they are considered within Madhurya Rasa, their mood is Dasya Rasa to Srimati Radharani. They experience the joys of Madhurya Rasa because obviously that servitude to Radharani allows the Madhurya pastimes to manifest, but their Dasya is mainly to Radharani. They do not have so much direct relationship with Krishna. It is indirect through Radharani. Because of this, in his mood, he was thinking, he said to clarify, then when people asked, he said the reason why is because that is when my Thakurani, Srimati Radharani's pain, her pain and therefore her need for my service was the greatest. At Kurukshetra, the need for my service as a devotee of Radharani is the strongest. And therefore it is at Kurukshetra that I would do my bhajan. So this deep, very intense feeling, this is found at Kurukshetra. And this is why it is, even though it is said Mahaprabhu is experiencing the great heights of Radharani's love, he's experiencing the great heights. Why is the analogy used for the feelings of the gopis of Kurukshetra? It is for this reason. And in fact, the gopis, they say, it is described here in Caitanya Caritamrita. I would flick through, but I won't have time to find the verse. But it is described generally that they begin glorifying the gopis when they see Krishna. Krishna. They see him and they begin glorifying him. They say, "Oh, great, oh, great Lord, you are the Paramatma. You are all these things." But it is very interesting that the names they used. It is described by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that there are two names for Krishna. There are primary names and there are secondary names. The primary names are those names which are used in his Leelas. So Nandanandan or Krishna or the names like this, Shyam. Names like these are primary names because they refer to his transcendental pastimes. Secondary names are those names which refer to the way that Krishna relates to the material world. So, and these names are filled with Aishwarya. These are the names of like Ishvar, Paramatma, Brahman. These sort of titles, these names, which have to refer more to his relationships with the Mahamaya than his relationships with the Yogamaya. These names were the names that were used by the gopis when they glorified Krishna. Obviously, they weren't going to chastise him directly. But it is considered that this is an example of parokshavad. It is indirect speech. Because actually it was a chastisement, in a sense. It was an expression of their frustration. They were using these names of Aishwarya because they were implying that that is what you are giving us. You are giving us Aishwarya. You are not giving us your sweetness. You are not giving us your madhurya. So these names were given, again, to express that frustration. And this is showing, actually, that at the highest points, and this is the glories of these devotees who relate to Krishna without opulence, but with sweetness. Because it may be asked, Mahaprabhu, he's saying the name Jagannath. Is Jagannath not a name that is referring to Krishna's relation with the material world? Is Patita Pavana another name that is often given to Jagannath? Is this not also a name that is referring to Krishna's relationship with the material world? But in these highest modes, even awareness of Aishvarya does nothing more than to intensify that love for Krishna in his simple form, without opulence but with sweetness, or rather with opulence there but covered by the intensity of the sweetness. So these names are being spoken, these names are given a new dimension. They are no longer names of Aishvarya, but they are names of Aishvarya, but Aishvarya or opulence, which is intensifying the sweetness of the love of these devotees. And that is why Mahaprabhu could say names like Jagannath and all, and still relish these deep, deep emotions. Aishvarya at one point no longer becomes an obstacle, but becomes an intensifier for that sweet love. Okay, I have 5 minutes. I won't be able to get through the rest of what I had ready, but I will go through a tiny few points. Because Mahaprabhu, Jagannath, Mahaprabhu's time with Jagannath Swami is very extensive. So an understanding of Jagannath is very central to an understanding of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Mahaprabhu spent a lot of time worshipping there, and we will get to that as we get deeper into the chapters. But there is a significant, or I think a rather interesting purport, which Srila Prabhupada has. So these are texts 63 and 64 of the Madhya Lila. It is said to avoid turmoil, 3 great personalities, Haridas Thakur, Srila Rupa Goswami, and Srila Sanatana Goswami, did not enter the temple of Jagannath. This is obviously for the reason that Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, they were in the occupation, they were taking high position in the government of the Muslim rule. And therefore, they were considered to have abandoned their Hindu status by Hindu society, and they were rejected, and therefore they were not allowed into the temple. Haridas Thakur, to take it one step forward, he was born in a Muslim family. Bhaktividya Purana Swami was once giving a class, and he says actually, according to the Manu Samhita, the various Smriti Shastras regarding the running of society, it is to be considered that a Brahminical person, he is purely vegetarian. Yeah, no onion, garlic, eggs, anything. Then maybe people on lower levels in society, maybe they will eat some forms of meat. If one person eats dog, they are considered to be outcasts. They are no longer even to be considered within the four strata of society. But if one eats beef or eats cow, they are no longer to be considered human. They are to be considered demons. So the Muslim, obviously, we know that in Muslim culture, cows are often eaten. So this is not considered to be the most opulent of cultures or of births. So this is why it is generally considered they did not allow the entry. However, this does not take to the essence. Of course, bhakti overrules any material considerations. So their conception was not proper. And because of that, Mahaprabhu, he would associate with them. If all 3 of them were not there, he would at least want the association of 2 of them. And he would associate with them, and what he would do? Every day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to see the Upala Bhoga ceremony at the temple of Jagannath. And after seeing this, he used to go visit these 3 great personalities on his way to his own residence. The Upala Bhog is defined in Prabhupada's purport as a particular type of offering performed just behind the Garuda Stambha on a stone slab. The stone slab is called the Upala. All the food is offered within the temple room just below the altar of Jagannath. This bhoga, however, was offered on the stone slab within the vision of the public. Therefore, it is called Upala Bhoga. So everyone was allowed to see, and that is why he joined them with this, because he wanted to show the higher understanding that he has of these conceptions. So this is reflected as well in the pastimes of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went with his disciples to see in Jagannath Puri, to see the Murti of Jagannath, he went through, and obviously he was allowed entrance. There was no issue with him. So he went through, and all his disciples went through as well. And after exiting the temple, he turned around to his disciples and he said, "Did you all see Jagannath?" And they all said, "Yes, we saw Jagannath. He was very beautiful. We had darshan of Jagannath." And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, "No, none of you have seen Jagannath. None of you can see Jagannath. And that is not even the purpose of you coming here. You did not come to see Jagannath because in your heart there is only desire for sense gratification. You just wanted to see something pretty. The whole point of coming here is that Jagannath might see you. Jagannath is drishta, he is the seer. And you are drishya, you are the seen. You come here so that maybe Jagannath will give his merciful glance onto you. But will he give you his merciful glance? He will not give it to anyone. It is not that he wants to see some people ridden in the depths of Maya. It is not that he will want to see such fallen souls. He will want to see his devotees. That is why it is better to do as Mahaprabhu did, to stand behind the Garuda Stambha, to sit there. Because then Jagannath, he will look for Garuda, who is his devotee. He is not like you, who are not his devotees, who are so conditioned, who are so unappealing to his vision. He will look, and then maybe, as he is looking at Garuda, maybe then he will see us on the side, and by his mercy, he will give some of the glance of his vision. This is the actual way that darshan should be done of Jagannath Swami. Not only did Bhaktisiddhanta say that, that it should be done echoing Mahaprabhu's attitude, but actually we should realize that even though they were not disqualified, Haridas Thakur, Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, even though they were not disqualified, they were put into a humble position. Out of their humility, they accepted this position. But the devotees of Mahaprabhu and the true Vaishnavas, in their humility, should realize that the position that Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswamis were accused of having is the actual position of the conditioned souls. And therefore they should take that position. And they should hope that when Jagannath Swami, when he takes a look at Garuda, maybe we will get some remnants of that vision. Maybe we will get some remnants of that darshan. The meaning of darshan is not that we may see the Lord. The meaning of darshan is that the Lord may mercifully see us. That is the meditation. And so, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, actually it is better that we take darshan of a deity named Patita Pavana. I've run out of time to discuss the significance of this deity Patita Pavana, so we'll discuss tomorrow. But he is a deity of Jagannath Swami with no arms, no legs, only the face. And there is no Balaram or Subhadra next to him. And he is outside the eastern gate of the temple. And there is a very sweet pastime which echoes the sentiments of this mood. But of course, I've run out of time. We will discuss tomorrow. Okay. Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur ki jai. Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya.